As dawn spilled its honeyed glow across Loveland, the contours of the Rocky Mountains seemed to huddle closer together, whispering tales of mysteries that lay cloaked in their craggy expanse. Amid this postcard tableau, the city of Loveland breathed with its own peculiar rhythm, its heartbeat found not just in its vibrant streets, but in the quiet whispers of secrets that rustled beneath its calm facade. In the heart of this city, ensconced within his study, Detective Samuel Travers mulled over an unusual case file. He was an imposing figure, a tower of strength hewn from resilience and courage, and yet the shadows of a quiet fear lurked in the creases of his stern expression. Every mention of heights, every echo of altitude, had his heart thrumming an urgent beat, an old phobia stirred by a trauma he kept wrapped tightly within himself. The peaks of the Rockies looming on the horizon were a constant reminder of his secret fear. St. Adelaide's orphanage. The words seemed innocent enough, yet a trickle of unease crawled down his spine. He found himself drawn into the swirling vortex of allegations that surrounded the sanctuary for the forsaken. Smuggling, they said. But the files he had didn't weave a consistent story. It was the incongruity that tugged at him, echoing some forgotten tune of conspiracies that had once motivated his every move. "Sam," came a voice, gentle as the rustling autumn leaves, breaking his contemplation. Victoria Marlowe, his stalwart partner and the town's deputy, leaned in the doorway. Her sharp gaze held an air of conviction, a fire that was tempered by the compassion she carried in her heart. The local folks adored her, and Samuel had often found solace in their camaraderie, especially during his darkest hours. Now he needed her steady presence, her pragmatic mind to navigate through the case. "Strange, isn't it?" she queried, looking at the file in his hand, her voice a soothing balm against the brewing storm in his mind. "St. Adelaide's, a hub for smuggling." Samuel nodded, his gaze distant. The town of Loveland, he reflected, had always been a symbol of tranquility. It was a place that promised a quiet life, nestled between the motherly arms of nature. Yet it seemed even this serene town held its share of ghouls, lurking behind its charming veneer, masquerading as parts of benign institutions. "The plot is lousy, as if the conspirators want us to know," he muttered, his eyes meeting Victoria's. She understood his concerns, the undercurrents of his thoughts. They had worked long enough together to communicate without uttering much. A shiver ran down his spine as he glanced at the towering mountains, his unease churning into a full-blown dread. The specters of the mountains, their dark secrets in the case of St. Adelaide's, were beginning to merge into a haunting melody that held him captive. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long, monstrous shadows, he felt himself teetering on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss he had no choice but to descend into. With a decisive nod at Victoria, he whispered, "We start tomorrow, at dawn." The morning came wrapped in a veil of mist, as if the day itself held its breath in anticipation of what was to be unveiled. St. Adelaide's orphanage, a grand, time-worn edifice that whispered tales of yore, stood against the backdrop of the Rockies. Its ivy-clad walls, mullioned windows, and weathered spires spoke of a benign presence. Yet as Samuel and Victoria approached its gates, an uncanny stillness gripped the air, as though the very stones of the building held secrets nestled deep within their heart. Stepping inside, they were greeted by the orphanage matron, a kindly figure whose smile did little to dispel the lurking disquiet. Her eyes, twin pools of shadow, held a flicker of unspoken stories. As they began their investigation, the normalcy of the setting seemed to clash with the sinister undertones of the accusations. They found their inquiries met with polite, innocuous responses. Yet beneath the orphanage's calm rhythm, they could sense an aberrant undertow. During a tour of the facility, they passed by a grand staircase that spiraled upwards, its apex vanishing into darkness. Samuel felt a cold shudder of apprehension. The fear of heights that usually lay dormant within him surged, a phantom pain of dread that pulsed in synchrony with the mysteries the building held. But there was no option to retreat. He pressed on, his fear and curiosity intertwining in a bitter dance. As they delved deeper into the day, Oddities began to punctuate the normalcy. Unseen figures flitting in the corner of their eyes, fleeting whispers carried on the wind, doors creaking without provocation, and sudden chills that seized the warmest rooms. Victoria, too, felt the prickle of disquiet, her sharp gaze catching the subtle dissonance between what was seen and what was perceived. "Strange place, this," she confided, her voice barely a whisper in the ancient halls of St. Adelaide's. "Even the walls feel as if they're holding their breath." Samuel nodded, feeling the echoes of the past layering with the whispers of the present. Every interaction, every corner of the orphanage seemed to be shrouded in a silken web of enigma. "A riddle wrapped in a mystery," he muttered, his gaze lost in the twisting staircase that stood as a symbolic representation of their spiraling confusion. Their conversation was interrupted by a child's laughter, bright and piercing, echoing through the desolate hallways. They turned to look, but there was no one in sight, only the echoes of their own heartbeats rebounding off the cold stone walls. As dusk cloaked the orphanage in shadows, they took their leave, their minds tangled with more questions than when they had arrived. Samuel could feel a foreboding chill gnawing at his resolve. The orphanage, its staff, the children, and Victoria, everything seemed to swim before his eyes in a surreal montage of unease. The path ahead was a mystery, a climb into the unknown, whispering promises of darker revelations that awaited them in the shadows. The following days unfolded like a languid nightmare, each more fraught with a subtle unease than the last. Samuel and Victoria continued to unravel the complex tapestry of St. Adelaide's, the disturbing undercurrents becoming more tangible, yet still elusive to their grasp. Every night, the spectral image of the orphanage haunted Samuel's dreams, mingling with his fear of heights to birth surreal nightmares that left him in a cold sweat. One evening, as a storm raged over Loveland, he sat alone in his study, trying to connect the disjointed threads of their investigation. His eyes fell on a half-hidden photograph in one of the case files. As he pulled it out, his heart skipped a beat. It was a snapshot of Victoria, her arm linked with a stranger's, standing in front of St. Adelaide's. His mind whirred as he traced the lines of Victoria's familiar smile and the clandestine glance she shared with the stranger. It was a moment frozen in time that hinted at unspoken complicity. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within his mind. Betrayal was a bitter draught, its poison seeping into the cracks of his trust. Victoria, the one beacon of stability in this growing abyss, was now a source of suspicion. Yet there was something in her, in their shared past, that urged him to seek answers before condemning her. Confrontation was a cruel dance, and as he met her the following day, he felt an uncanny dread grip his heart. In her eyes, he sought the truth, the proof that the photograph was just a misunderstanding. But as he presented it to her, the flicker of surprise that danced in her eyes was quickly replaced by a steely resignation. She sighed, her voice barely a whisper against the oppressive silence that lay between them. "It's not what it looks like, Sam," she began, but her words trailed off, her gaze shifting away. Her silence was more damning than any confession, a tacit admission that shrouded their partnership in a cloud of betrayal. As he left, the weight of her betrayal pressed heavily against him, transforming the quaint streets of Loveland into an alien landscape. Each gust of wind, each rustle of leaves seemed to whisper the bitter tale of treachery. The orphanage stood in the distance, its silhouette a monstrous specter against the mountains. Staring up at the imposing heights of the Rockies, Samuel felt an uncanny terror uncoil within him. His fear of heights, the looming presence of the orphanage, and Victoria's betrayal were conspiring to birth a monstrous dread. The weight of the unseen horror ahead seemed to parallel the fear he felt when looking at the towering peaks. Unraveling the conspiracy would now mean confronting not only his fear, but the horrifying depths of betrayal as well. Alone in his pursuit now, Samuel found himself drawn back to the haunting specter of the orphanage. The stony facade seemed to leer at him, the arched windows and high spires mimicking grotesque faces, twisted in an unholy grimace. As he stepped into the labyrinthine edifice, the uncanny silence hummed with an undercurrent of anticipation, as if the orphanage itself was conscious of his purpose. His search took him into the forgotten corners of St. Adelaide's, down cellar steps slick with moisture and grime, through cobweb-laden corridors that groaned with age, into rooms filled with strange artifacts that reeked of an alien origin. His investigation had taken a sinister turn. He was no longer tracking a mere smuggling operation, but something far more ancient, far more dreadful. One such artifact caught his attention. It was an antique box intricately carved with symbols that seemed to writhe under his gaze. As he reached out to touch it, a sudden frigid gust swept through the room, extinguishing the lantern in his hand. Then there was silence, a silence so absolute that he could hear the deafening roar of his own heartbeat. Out of the shadows emerged a figure, the stranger from the photograph with Victoria. His appearance was as startling as his words. He spoke of sacrifices, of cosmic entities from dimensions inconceivable to the human mind, puppeteers who controlled the threads of reality, and of Victoria's involvement in these ghastly rites. He felt his mind reel as the stranger spoke, his words weaving a terrible tapestry of cosmic horror. A betrayal that was not merely of trust, but of humanity itself. Victoria, his ally, was an agent of these entities, a cog in the grand cosmic machine of horror. He was trapped in a narrative that defied logic, yet his journey into the depths of St. Adelaide's was proof enough that this was reality, a reality more terrifying than his worst nightmares. Staring at the ancient symbols on the box, he felt an overwhelming dread. The fear of heights that had once haunted him seemed insignificant now. Instead, he was standing at the edge of an abyss of cosmic terror, staring into the unfathomable depths of a reality that promised nothing but madness and despair. As he left the orphanage that day, the sun was sinking behind the mountains, casting long, monstrous shadows over Loveland. Samuel was no longer just a detective investigating a smuggling operation. He was a solitary figure on a bleak landscape, waging a war against unseen cosmic horrors that lurked in the shadows. The strings of his fate were being pulled by an unimaginable terror, and the puppet show was far from over. The world that Samuel once knew was splintering, each fragment reflecting a surreal tableau of cosmic horror. The serenity of Loveland had been replaced by a spectral gloom, the quaint charm of the city streets drowned in the echoing screams of unseen entities. And at the heart of it all was St. Adelaide's, its silhouette an omnipresent reminder of the sinister puppet show orchestrated by the cosmos itself. Confronting Victoria was a task that required strength that he felt was dwindling with every passing moment. Yet he knew he had no other choice. She had been his partner, his ally, and if she was indeed entwined in this horrifying conspiracy, he needed to face her one last time. The confrontation was nothing short of a surreal nightmare. Victoria, once the symbol of law and order, was now a chilling image of cosmic dread. As she confessed to her part in the macabre puppet show, her voice held a dissonance that echoed the discord of their reality. The woman he knew was merely a facade, behind which lurked an agent of unspeakable horror. She was an integral cog in the unseen cosmic machinery, orchestrating an ancient rite in the heart of Loveland. In the face of her confession, Samuel felt a crushing despair. It was not merely the sting of betrayal, but the crushing weight of a reality that seemed hell-bent on pushing him into the realm of madness. Yet amidst the dread and despair, he found a vestige of courage, a stubborn will to survive, to escape the cosmic puppet show he was ensnared in. He knew he could not fight the unseen entities, the dread that seemed to seep into every aspect of Loveland. But he could escape it. And so he fled, leaving behind the life he once knew, the partner he once trusted, and the city he once loved. He found himself on the edge of the city, staring up at the towering peaks of the Rockies. His phobia of heights, once a crippling fear, now seemed inconsequential. He had faced a fear far more profound, far more terrifying, the fear of the unseen. With one last glance at the distant silhouette of St. Adelaide's, he ventured into the wilderness. Each step he took was a step away from the horrifying reality he had left behind. Yet as he fled, he couldn't shake off the eerie feeling of unseen eyes watching him, of spectral whispers echoing in the wind, a constant reminder of the cosmic puppet show that continued to unfurl in the heart of Loveland. His escape was but a Pyrrhic victory. He had survived, but at what cost? Samuel Travers, once a symbol of courage and justice, was now a fleeting shadow, forever on the run from the horrifying puppet strings of the cosmos. His story was a testament to unimaginable horror, a chilling reminder that some secrets, some conspiracies, are too terrifying to unveil. For they do not merely shatter one's peace, they fracture the very fabric of one's reality. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, show your support with a like and subscribe, and stay notified by hitting the bell icon. Expect more cosmic horror from Eldritch Tales Factory, and feel free to explore our other stories. See you in the next video.